I'm Pat Ryan, the chairman of the Princeton Regional Chamber of Commerce. Welcome to our Princeton Regional Chamber of Commerce June Luncheon. We have another great crowd on hand today, 150 plus, an excellent speaker, and we anticipate a fine program today. Peter, it's all yours.
Now, without further ado, I'd like to bring up Mimi Omachinsky to introduce our speaker. Mimi?
My name's Mimi Omachinsky. I own Princeton Tour Company. You guys know that I adore sparkly people. Since I've lived in Princeton, the big reason why I love my job is I get to meet a lot of sparkly Princetonians like Joe Herron. And the best ones are a lot like Joe. Joe's a real guy with a huge job, and his products arguably will change the world. If you want to get to know Joe Herron, I think it's reasonable to kind of be like, what's that guy like, right? If you want to get to know Joe Herron, don't go up to him and ask him what it's like to lead 60,000 employees in one of the world's largest comprehensive drug development companies. Don't ask him what it was like to win the Ernst & Young Entrepreneur of the Year award. That's not how you get the conversation started with a guy like Joe Herron. Joe Herron, you get FaceTime. First thing you want to ask him and talk to him about is LSU football. This guy's from the South. We're really not that hard, you guys. LSU football. Now, that's your insider tip for getting to know Joe Herron. I know you're all excited to listen to him speak, so I'll let it go now. Please give a huge, warm chamber welcome to my dear friend, Joe Herron.
It means something. I've had a chance to try to get to some high bars in my life, but it has just been raised again today. Sparkly. Sparkly. That is a really, really high bar. So it's a pleasure to be here with all of you, along with some of our Covance colleagues. In life, both good news and bad news seems to come in threes. Even fairy tales like Three Blind Mice or Three Little Pigs or famous quotes we know like Friends, Romans, Countrymen, I came, I saw, I conquered. Yeah, so things in threes it's like the smallest number of elements that establishes a pattern. But when you're a speaker, you like threes, because it sort of creates the notion that you've taken this massive amount of research and data and distilled it down to really the essence. These three things are like super important. So I'll let you be the judge as to whether we reach that today. But when I think about growing a business in good and bad economic times, I think of three things. Get more customers, get those customers to buy more, and get those customers to buy more often. If the first thing you do in the morning is you get up and read the paper, if you're me, you go, the pharmaceutical industry is out of business. I might as well close the company. And you read the economic news or the state news or the global news or the European news, and you go, why even lace up my shoes, and sort of go to work? Well, you do because you're a business leader and you need to find more customers, get them to buy more, and get them to buy more often. So what I thought I would do is tell you three stories that sort of hammer home each of those points. And I think what you'll see is being a business leader is less about finding the bad news and making excuses. It's more about taking action, showing leadership, and getting something done. So I'd like to roll the calendar back to 1973. I was graduating from high school in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and I faced my first difficult choice. I was offered a scholastic scholarship to Yale University, and I was either going to do that or I was going to find a way to get my way through Louisiana State University. I had never been north of Memphis, Tennessee, and I had never been on an airplane, and New Haven, Connecticut seemed like the other end of the world. So I told my parents, I'm not going there. How much have you saved up for my college education? Now, my father was a fireman, and my mom worked in a department store. And they gave me things that money could not give you in terms of honesty, integrity, hard work, how to build trust-based relationships, how to be a good son. All the things that I value and cherish today. And even though we're in 65 countries and I travel all over the world, I call them 3 times a week, tell them I love them, I'm thinking about them, and how are they feeling today. So those were all great things. But what they had was $500. Now, in 1974, in-state tuition at LSU was $215. So my dad said, we got you covered for the first 2 semesters if you live at home. So I said, well, that's just great. And what I wanted to do worse than anything else in the world was to make him proud of me. So I dive into LSU knowing that I got a burn rate, and I'm sort of done next May. I got to do something. And at that time, you could work offshore and make a lot of money on the oil rigs, but you may come back without an arm or a leg or a finger, or you may not come back at all, but you can make a lot of money, or you could scoop ice cream or be a lifeguard at the swimming pool. I heard about the craziest job in the world, and it was selling books door to door in the summertime. What I was recruited to sell, or had the opportunity to sell, was a one-volume sort of encyclopedia and homework manual called the Volume Library, 2,600-page book that helped kids with homework. And so I land in Atlanta, Georgia. It's 90 degrees, 98% humidity. And I had been trained for a week, and I had 2 guys living with me. Now, what the math was if you could sell 2 of those a day, at the end of the summer, you'd have $2,000 in your pocket. And that seemed like all the money in the world. But I had a goal. I had to sell 2 a day. Well, the dirty little secret is when you're selling door to door, getting 2 people a day to talk to you is really a challenge. So that first day, I had so much energy, and I'm going house to house to house, door slam, door slam, door slam. And I was thinking, holy cow, this is really tough. And I was sweating, and I stopped between 2 houses. I looked, and as far as I could see that way, where doors had been slammed in my face, and I looked that way, and they all looked exactly the same. And I'm going, man, I am in a really, really tough situation. And then I had the second obstacle, is that I was dodging and fighting dogs all day. Okay, so I learned to take a little small sample case and keep that box between my leg and that dog. And no one talked to me until 6:30 that night. There were 2 ladies during the day that said, you know, I kind of like what you're talking about, but I'm going to let you home without my husband here or whatever, and can you come back in the evening? So I was pretty discouraged, but the good news is those last 2 calls, I sold 2 books. I'm thinking, dang, I'm going to make $2,000. I mean, this is going to be unbelievable. So I go back to where I'm going to stay, and the 2 guys I went with have all their bags packed. They are out of there. They're saying, this is the craziest thing I have ever heard of. Why would anybody want to do this? Well, long story made short is I knew I had to get customers. I had to get 2 a day, some way, somehow. So I came up with all sorts of tricks. So if Mrs. Jones did not want to let me in, and there was about a 99% chance she didn't, I just start showing her the book right at the door. Just put my foot on the screen door and just start, showing her the book. And if she looked interested, about halfway in, I always had this question, do you mind if I come in? And 99% of the time, they said, yeah, come on in, But I knew the look on the face, which was, I'm hoping you shut up real quick and get out of here, right? Second thing that occurred to me was that moms made the decision on education. They're the ones helped out with homework. But most of the time, Dad had to agree to pay for something. So I came up with this notion that all day long, my job was not to sell a book. It was to set up appointments with women who committed to me the dad would be there and the kids would be there. So I'd go back, and between 7 o'clock at night and 10 o'clock at night is when I sold 90% of my books. And I started working that program, and I could sell 4 a day, and then I could sell 6 a day, and then I could sell 8 a day. Well, with about a week to go in the summer, there were 6,500 students that signed up to sell books, and there were about 3,500 left. And I was rated #1 in the United States. Just a few days to go, my roommate who had recruited me said, Joe, you made a lot more money than you thought, and you're working 84 hours a week. And that was the deal, 8 in the morning to 10 o'clock at night, 6 days a week. And he said, you've been working really, really hard. And he said, what you really need is a couple days off. There's only a few more days left. You're not going to make that much money in a few days. I want to go to Stone Mountain, Georgia. I want you to go with me, and we're just going to have a great old time. And I said, but I'm #1 in the country. I can't stop. I'm going to keep pushing. There's customers to get. So I drive. At that time, I was living in Rome, Georgia. And I'm driving out to where I'm supposed to be, and it is raining cats and dogs. I mean, it is raining so hard, it's unbelievable. You can't get out of the car and go to the house. So there was a payphone on the side of the road, and the whole time I'm thinking, Rusty wants me in Stone Mountain. He's at Stone Mountain. He's having fun. He's probably chasing girls, And I'm out here in this rainstorm. So I go in this phone booth, and I'm standing ankle deep in water. And I call my dad, and I said, Dad, I just need somebody to talk to. I said, you know how hard I've worked this summer. He said, I know. And I said, Rusty wants me to go to Stone Mountain. It's pouring down rain, and I couldn't even finish what I stayed. I just started tears rolling down my eyes. I'm going, I'm so tired. What should I do? So my dad said, Joe, first of all, I love you to death, and I respect any decision that you make. But he said, in about 3 weeks, you're going to be sitting in Tiger Stadium on Saturday night. And you're going to be sitting there with a date, and you're going to be looking back at this very moment in time, and you're going to say one of two things. I quit, and I took some time off, and I enjoyed myself. Or I can say, you know what, it was only 3 or 4 more days, and I pushed through, and I finished number 1. You make the decision. Well, guess what I did? The next 3 days were the 3 best days of the entire summer. And I finished number 1. I came home with a check for over $11,000. And by the time I graduated from LSU, I had 38 students working for me. I had a new Datsun 240ZX, a ski boat, a good-looking girlfriend, and 50 grand in the bank. So every day, it's difficult to find new clients. And I guess the moral of that story is set a goal. 2 a day was my goal. By the end of the day, I was selling 10 a day. And don't be discouraged. There's a million reasons why you can't grow your business and you can't find new clients. Just go on Mimi's website. There is a niche to her for everything that you can possibly imagine. And that's because she's always trying to find new clients, right? So the second story is get your clients to buy more products and services. So raise your hand if you mow your own lawn. Good for you. Good for you. Well, I'm a guy who always took great pride in mowing my own lawn. And the last couple places I've lived where executives live, and I'm the only one on the street that mows my own lawn. My wife's sort of embarrassed, and most of the guys in the neighborhood are sort of pissed off at me, going, you know, every time my wife sees you mowing the lawn, I go, if he can mow the lawn, why can't you mow the lawn, right? Well, in the last 10 years at Covance, we've moved from being in 20 countries to being in 65 countries. And so the good news, I love to mow the lawn, do a pretty good job. The bad news is I'm a no-show too high a percentage of the time. And my wife actually fires me. And she said, I have found this guy named Claudio Di Donato. Raise your hand if you know who Claudio Di Donato is. Well, you've seen his trucks, okay? So she said, Claudio is going to come on every Thursday, and he's going to mow the lawn, and, you know, that's sort of it. Well, I just figured he wasn't going to be that good, and he wasn't going to show up, and, you know, I could find, you know, problems with how he did things. Well, in reality, the first day, I stayed late, went to work late because I wanted to check this guy out. So he comes in, he's got nice trucks, he's got a big smile on his face, he introduces himself, he's got 3 or 4 guys with him, and they all have the same shirt on, and, you know, they just seem to be the right kind of guys you want, you know, doing your lawn. In about 15 minutes, they're gone. The thing looks perfect. I'm thinking, well, that's pretty good. And so it goes on, and after, you know, 6 months or a year, Claudio is just knocking the ball out of the park. So he's driving by one day. It's not our day to get mowed, and I'm on a ladder with a pair of pruning shears, and I'm pruning this tree. And he pulls over and he says, Mr. Herring, a guy like you does not need to be on a ladder with pruning shears. He said, when we come on next Thursday, you know, we'll prune your trees. And I said, you sure? He said, yeah, we'll do it. And then the next year, we had our annuals. So we plant annuals every year. And my wife said, you're a week behind. I'm going to see if Claudio will do that. Well, he did. And he planted more annuals and better annuals, you know, than I had. So a long story made short, Claudio saw a customer with a wide range of needs the customer didn't even know they had, and just kept providing service and kept doing it with high quality. And now my financial situation is very simplified. My check comes in, I pay for the house and food, I give the rest to Claudio. But there's a message there. There's a message there. You're always looking for ways to help a client solve a problem. The last one is about how to get a client to buy more often. And this leads into a Covance story. So for those of you that don't know Covance, we are the world's largest drug development services company. We actually have 12,000 employees in 65 countries. So it's a nice estimation. Mimi said 60,000.
Well, it's gonna be 60.
We're on the way. We're on the way to 60,000. We work with the world's largest pharmaceutical and biotech companies to prove that a drug is safe first, and then second of all, that it's effective for its intended use. So safety is generally done in large laboratories. We have a laboratory in Madison, Wisconsin with 2,000 employees, 1 million square feet, a whole bunch of $200,000, $300,000, $400,000 piece of very sophisticated instrumentation to determine how much of a drug gets to the target, how long it's there. And then the other end is running clinical trials literally around the world to determine whether the drug is safe for its intended use. whether it's effective, how it stacks up against a comparator drug. And I got to tell you, it's an incredibly exciting company to be a part of. When we spun out of Corning and moved to Princeton in 1997, we were about 2,500 employees and about $300 million in revenue. And this year we'll be over 12,000 employees and $2.2 billion in revenue. So it's been an incredibly exciting story. It's incredible to be based here in Princeton. So whether you know it or not, within about an hour and a half of where we're sitting, about 2/3 of all new drug development decisions in the world are made. I mean, New Jersey is literally the medicine chest of the world. So this is really a special place for our company. But if you look at the pharmaceutical industry, the last 4 years have been the worst 4 years in the last 50. So the global economy has been probably the last 4 years of the worst years of my lifetime, or the worst 4 years for the parent industries that we serve. And it's easy to get sort of down in the mouth about that. We have a client in Indianapolis, Indiana called Eli Lilly. And Eli Lilly had a bunch of their drugs go off patent. And what happens these days, if a drug goes off patent, 80% of the revenue goes away in 60 days and 90% goes away in 90 days. And if it's a $3 billion drug that's making 95% gross margin, that is a catastrophic event. And it affects how much you can spend on things like research and development. And so Eli Lilly had a number of patent cliffs, and they had this huge research campus just outside of Indianapolis, in actually Greenfield, Indiana. And a lot of drug safety testing, drug discovery work was done there. And they were finding that they were never really having enough work to keep everybody busy. Covance, on the other hand, was expanding, and we needed new laboratory space, early childhood development centers that got about 400 or 500 kids a second meal a day, and the equivalent of sort of preschool or kindergarten, and got them ready to go to school. And then we expanded it, and we're about 1,000 kids. We ended up building 60 homes. We bought a bunch of motorcycles. And the care process is that you actually get it to a steady state, and then you hand it back. And we just handed it back to the community. And it's been a huge success. And so, thank you. And so then the question is, well, what do we do next? Actually, we're going to start what we hope is a series of investments called a pop-up clinic. And the first one we're going to do this year is in Dallas, Texas. And what we're going to try to do is round up 5,000 or 6,000 underserved people in healthcare, get them there for a day, and get them a cardiology screen and a cancer screen and a pap smear and all the things we can possibly do. And then we've arranged a series of free clinics where we can then refer them to and get that care. And we think we can do those things for about 50 grand. And if this one is successful, then we're going to start marching across the country and try to do 3 or 4 or 5 a year. And as wonderful as our healthcare system is in this country, there's still too many people that fall through the cracks. Look, it's a pleasure to be here with all. Thank you for your questions. And I guess can we close this out? Huh?
Joe, thank you. That was not only a fun place to live, fun sort of good, but very enlightening. Thank you. It is no wonder Covance is doing so well with leadership like you. That's great. Thank you. Next month here, can't outdo Joe, but going to be real close. Jeff Bedser of Internet Crimes Group is going to tell you what's going on with the internet, what's going on with cybercrime, and I'll tell you, everybody in this room, you want to hear what he has to say. And Dave Demuth, thank you very much, Dave, for getting him. I appreciate it. As we always do, thank you all for coming out this afternoon. This chamber is growing and successful because of everybody in this room. It is why we're doing what we're doing. It's all for you, and we hope you enjoy it. Thank you very much. And Joe, I hope we can maybe see Covance up here next year as one of the signs. Thanks a lot.